The night she witnessed the murder wasn't supposed to be special. It wasn't supposed to change her life. It wasn't supposed to put her in the crosshairs of a man feared by an entire city. But sometimes fate doesn't knock. Sometimes it shatters the door, walks in, and whispers, "Run." Maya Clark never believed she would become a target. She was the girl who followed rules, arrived early at work, double-checked locks, and never walked in the dark without pepper spray in her hand. But the moment she saw him, the man the city whispered about, the world she knew dissolved. And when their eyes met across that rain-soaked alley, everything inside her froze. Not because he was dangerous, but because he looked at her like she had just become the most important secret of his life. And moments later, when gunshots exploded behind her and she stumbled back in terror, that same man, cold, powerful, ruthless, stepped forward, grabbed her wrist, and said in a voice carved from steel, "If you want to live, come with me." She didn't know his name then. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know why the Mafia's most feared lieutenant would shield a stranger with his own body. She didn't know he was the only person who could keep her alive. She didn't know she would fall for him. All she knew was that one wrong turn had turned her into the only witness to a murder, and he, a man born from shadows and loyalty, was now the only protection between her and a deadly fate. This is where her story begins, the story of a girl who saw something she shouldn't have, and the man who would burn the world to keep her safe. Maya pressed her back against the cold brick wall, breath shivering out of her in short, terrified gasps. Rain splattered over the alley, turning the ground slick and dark as the dim streetlight flickered like it was afraid of the shadows, too. She had just gotten off her shift at the small cafe downtown. A normal night, a normal route home, a normal shortcut through the alley she had taken 1,000 times. But tonight, the world shifted. She wasn't alone. At first, she thought it was just two men arguing, a businessman and someone less fortunate. City noise, nothing she should get involved in. But then she heard it, a scream, muffled, cut off, followed by the sickening crack of something that wasn't thunder. Her heart stopped. She peeked around the corner, just a tiny glance, and that was her mistake. A man lay on the ground, his shirt stained red, motionless. Standing over him were two tall men dressed in black, expensive suits, hard eyes, unmistakable ruthlessness. Not street thugs, not drunk strangers. Something else, something far more dangerous. Maya covered her mouth to stop the sound rising in her throat. She should have run. She should have closed her eyes. She should have pretended she saw nothing. But then the third man stepped into the flickering light, and she froze. Tall, sharp-jawed, broad shoulders beneath a black coat, dark hair damp from the rain, a calmness carved into him like he was built from control. His presence was silent but heavy, like the air bent around him. His eyes lifted, straight toward her hiding place, and for a moment she forgot how to breathe. Not because he was terrifying, but because those eyes, cold, intelligent, unreadable, didn't miss anything. He saw her. She knew it. Yet, he didn't say a word. He didn't point, he didn't shout, he didn't call the other's attention. He simply narrowed his eyes the slightest bit, as if warning her, as if telling her to run without moving his lips. But Maya didn't move. Fear pinned her. Her legs felt like stone. Then, gunshots. Sharp, violent, close. Maya yelped, stumbling backward as the echo exploded through the alley. This time, he moved. He turned, stride powerful and purposeful, coming toward her before she even realized she was his destination. She scrambled away, palms scraping against wet pavement, but he reached her in seconds. His hand wrapped around her wrist, not painfully, but firmly, commandingly. Their eyes met again. Up close, he was even more intimidating, even more breathtaking. Lightning cracked through the sky, illuminating his face, strong cheekbones, rain-darkened lashes, lips pressed into a tense line. He spoke for the first time. His voice, a low, dangerous rumble, sent shivers down her spine. "You shouldn't have seen that." Maya's voice trembled. I didn't mean to, I swear." "Doesn't matter." He cut in quietly. He looked over his shoulder. Shadows moved behind him. People were coming. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "If you want to live, come with me." Maya shook her head, terrified. "I don't even know who you are." "You don't need to know," he said, tightening his grip. "You just need to move." "What if I don't?" He leaned in, his breath warm against the rain-chilled air. "Then you die, right here, in 30 seconds. Her heart lurched, her breath broke. He wasn't threatening her. He was telling the truth. And somehow she believed him. The safe house was quiet, too quiet. Emma sat on the old, worn-out sofa, her hands wrapped around a warm mug of tea Daniel had forced her to drink. The silence felt heavy, as if the walls themselves were listening. She could still feel the weight of the night on her shoulders, the echo of the gunshot, the haunting image of the man collapsed on the alley floor replaying in her mind. Every time she blinked, she saw the exact moment the murderer looked up, his cold eyes locking onto hers. It didn't feel real until she whispered it aloud again. "I saw everything." And because of that, her life had changed forever. Daniel stood near the window, the blinds barely parted, his posture rigid. He didn't look like the friendly officer she had met hours ago. He was a different version of himself here, sharper, colder, watchful. He had a gun holstered at his hip, his shoulders stiff beneath his dark jacket as he scanned the street below. There was something unsettlingly calm about him when he was in protective mode, something dangerous, yet safe. Emma didn't know what to make of that contradiction. She didn't know what to make of him. The minutes stretched like slow-moving shadows until Emma finally broke the silence. "Do you think he knows where I am?" Her voice wavered, barely above a whisper. Daniel turned toward her, his eyes softening for the first time since they entered the safe house. "Not yet," he answered, "but he will be looking." A chill crawled down her spine. He stepped closer and kneeled in front of her, lowering himself to eye level in a gesture so gentle it stunned her. "Emma, listen to me. You're not alone in this. I won't let anything happen to you, not while I'm breathing." She wanted to believe him, wanted desperately to hold on to the warmth in his voice, but fear still clung to her like a shadow she couldn't shake off. Daniel pulled out his phone and stepped aside to make a call. His voice became clipped, firm, commanding as he spoke to someone on his team. "No leaks, no records, no one outside the unit gets her name. Understood?" The tone of his voice told Emma everything. This man wasn't just an officer, he was a shield in human form. When he finished the call and returned, she felt that same strange tug in her chest, the part that whispered she was safe around him, the part she didn't trust, because safety was something she hadn't felt in hours. A sudden buzz from her phone shattered the fragile quiet. Emma flinched, grip tightening around her mug. Daniel instantly reached for his gun as he approached her. "Don't touch it," he ordered softly but firmly. Her breath caught as he carefully picked up the phone from the table. The screen lit up with an unknown number. Daniel's brows lowered. The message said, "I saw you." Emma's heart stopped. She felt it like a physical jolt through her entire body. Her breath hitched, her fingers trembling uncontrollably. Daniel cursed under his breath, something she had yet to see him do. He squeezed her shoulder gently. "He's trying to scare you. That means he hasn't found you yet." She shook her head frantically. "But how did he get my number?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "Because he's connected. Because this isn't just a random killer. He belongs to someone bigger." The words hit harder than the message. Mafia, organized crime, men who didn't leave witnesses breathing. Emma felt her stomach twist. Daniel, what if they already know? He held her shoulders and forced her to meet his gaze. Hey, look at me. You're safe. I'm with you. But safety was a fragile illusion. A single noise from outside, a car door slamming, made Emma jolt in fear. Daniel immediately sprang into motion, weapon drawn, silently moving toward the window. He peeked carefully through the blinds. A black SUV had stopped near the end of the block. Dark-tinted windows. Not moving, not leaving, watching. Daniel's breathing grew cold and quiet. "Stay behind me," he whispered without turning. Emma's pulse hammered in her ears as she stepped back. Is it them? He didn't answer immediately, and the silence was worse than any confirmation. After several tense seconds, the SUV rolled away, slowly, almost intentionally, like it wanted to be noticed. Daniel exhaled sharply. "We're moving." He grabbed a duffel bag from the closet, already packed. Emma blinked. "You planned this?" He didn't look at her as he loaded ammunition into a backup weapon. Always have a second plan. She stared at him with a strange mix of confusion and awe. This man, this protector, seemed to live in a constant state of readiness, as if he'd been trained for moments like this his entire life. "Where are we going?" she asked. Daniel finally looked up at her, his eyes softer again. "Somewhere safer, somewhere he'll never expect." She didn't question him when he took her hand. She didn't resist when he guided her out the back exit of the safe house. The alley behind the building was cold, damp, and narrow, lit only by flickering lamps. Daniel kept her close, his body slightly in front of hers, scanning every shadow like a man who had danced with danger before. When a stray cat knocked over a metal can several feet away, Emma gasped and gripped his jacket. Daniel turned, steady and collected. "It's okay, it's just a cat." He placed a reassuring hand over hers. "Breathe, Emma, I'm right here." But the fear wouldn't leave her, not when she knew the man who saw her face was out there, not when she knew she had witnessed something she was never meant to see, and not when she knew the Mafia didn't make mistakes, they made examples. Daniel led her to an unmarked car parked under the shadows of an overgrown tree. He opened the passenger door and helped her inside, his hand lingering on her arm longer than necessary. Something in his eyes flickered, something warm, something protective, something forbidden. She felt her chest tighten. She wasn't supposed to feel anything for him. He wasn't supposed to feel anything for her. The engine hummed to life and the car moved through the night's emptiness. Streetlights passed in long golden streaks across Emma's face. She watched Daniel as he drove, focused, alert, his jaw set in a line of determination. She wondered what kind of life he lived to be this prepared. She wondered what haunted him behind those sharp, watchful eyes. She wondered why he was being so gentle with her. She wondered why she trusted him so quickly. After nearly an hour of silent driving, Daniel finally spoke. "Emma, there's something I need to tell you." Her heart skipped. "What is it?" He hesitated, and that terrified her more than anything. Daniel wasn't the kind of man who hesitated. "The man who killed that guy last night, he's not just a hitman. He works for one of the largest Mafia families in the city." Emma felt the air leave her lungs. She pressed her back against the seat. "Why me? I'm nobody." Daniel shook his head. "You're the only witness. That makes you important to them and to me." The last words were soft, almost too quiet, but she heard them. Emma held her breath as the city lights faded behind them. The road darkened, the world quieting into the eerie stillness of open highway. She felt herself drifting into exhaustion, her mind heavy from fear, adrenaline, and the unfamiliar feeling of being protected. As she leaned slightly toward the window, sleep tugging at her, she felt something warm drape over her shoulders. Daniel's jacket. She opened her eyes halfway. "You didn't have to." He glanced at her briefly, a small warmth in his eyes. "I know." She didn't know when her eyes finally closed, but she did know one thing. She wasn't alone anymore. She had a protector, a shield, a man who promised to keep her alive. And somewhere in the darkness, miles away, a different man, the killer, received a call he was expecting. A cold voice whispered through the line. "Find the girl.
bring her alive. And the hunt officially began.
The atmosphere in Daniel's apartment shifted after the message. A quiet storm filled the room, as if the walls themselves understood that something dark and calculating had found its way into their safe space. Emma sat frozen on the couch, her fingers limped around her phone, the glow still reflecting the latest message. "I know where you are." It was no longer a threat hidden behind technology. It was presence. It was proximity. It was a promise. Daniel stood a few feet away, shoulders squared, jaw tight, eyes burning with a fury Emma had never seen in him before. He wasn't just worried now, he was ready for confrontation, ready to fight something he couldn't even see yet. He stepped forward, gently kneeling in front of her, taking the phone from her trembling hands. "Emma," he said softly, but his voice carried thunder underneath. "Look at me." She did, slowly. Fear lived in her eyes, and Daniel felt something inside him fracture. "You're not alone," he whispered. "Whoever he is, whatever he wants, he will not touch you." Emma's lips parted, but no sound came. Instead, her eyes filled, a single tear rolling down her cheek, silent, fragile, devastating. Daniel wiped it away with his thumb, his touch softer than anything she expected from someone usually so composed. "You're safe here," he whispered again, though he wasn't sure if he was saying it for her or convincing himself, because Emma wasn't safe, not yet, and he knew it. The quiet moment shattered as a soft rustling sound came from the hallway downstairs, not loud, not aggressive, but clear enough to slice through the silence like a knife. Emma flinched. Daniel instantly stood, movements controlled, alert and silent. He walked to his apartment door, looking through the peephole with steady eyes. Nothing, no shadows, no footsteps, no silhouettes, but the stillness felt wrong, heavy, watching. He returned to Emma, speaking low. "Pack a few more things. You're not leaving my sight today." She blinked. "Daniel, are we going somewhere?" "Yes," he said firmly. "Somewhere he can't reach you." "And where is that?" He hesitated for the first time, briefly. Then, "My other place." Emma frowned. "I didn't know you had another place." "You weren't supposed to," he answered quietly, "but right now it's the safest option." Something in his tone, quiet, serious, secret, made her chest flutter with a strange mix of fear and trust. She stood slowly, grabbing her small bag as Daniel tossed a hoodie toward her. "Wear this," he said, not commanding, protective, and she did. Daniel checked the windows, the locks, the hallway, and the stairwell before guiding her out through the back exit of his building, a narrow metal staircase rarely used. Emma followed closely behind as the cold air bit her cheeks and the city noise reached them as a distant hum. Daniel's car wasn't parked in its usual spot. Instead, he led her toward a different one, a dark gray SUV she'd never seen him drive before. "Is this yours?" she asked softly. Daniel didn't look at her as he opened the passenger door. "It's the one no one knows about." The answer didn't comfort her, not fully, but it made her understand something she hadn't before. Daniel's quiet life wasn't as simple or ordinary as she believed. As they drove, streets slipped by in a blur. Emma watched him from the corner of her eye, his tight grip on the steering wheel, the hard set of his jaw, the way he kept checking the rearview mirror every few seconds. He was calm, too calm, a calmness that wasn't natural, but trained. "Daniel," she whispered finally, voice fragile, "do you think he's following us?" Daniel didn't look at her. "No," he said, "but he's watching. He proved that much." "How could he even find your apartment?" Daniel hesitated, just enough for Emma to notice. "Daniel," he exhaled. Someone like him, if he wants to know something, he will know. People like this don't search, they observe, they wait, and when they decide to move, it's already too late to run." His tone made her shiver. "So what do I do?" He glanced at her finally, eyes softer. "You stay with me. You trust me. You don't go anywhere alone." She swallowed. "And if he comes?" Daniel's voice dropped, low, certain, unshakable. "Then he'll have to go through me." They drove deeper into the city, then beyond it, toward a quieter area with fewer buildings, fewer people. The streets turned narrower, lined with tall stone walls and old iron gates. Finally, Daniel pulled up to a secluded residence hidden behind thick trees. Not a house, more like a safe house. Solid, silent, guarded by nature itself. He parked, stepped out, scanned the area, then opened her door. "Come on." Emma followed him inside, the heavy wooden door closing behind them with a deep, echoing thud that made the space feel sealed off from the rest of the world. Warm light filled the interior, a simple, clean space with minimal furniture. Safe, quiet, too quiet. Daniel locked the door, then another lock she hadn't noticed, then input a code on a keypad. She watched, her heart pounding. "Daniel," she whispered, "what is this place?" He looked at her for a long moment, longer than usual, as if deciding how much to reveal. "It's where I go when I need to disappear," he said softly. Emma's breath caught. "Why would you ever need to disappear?" Daniel didn't answer right away. He walked toward the window, pulling the curtain aside to scan outside again. Only trees, only emptiness, only quiet. Then he turned to her. "Because dangerous people don't just appear in your life, Emma," he said quietly. "Sometimes they appear in mine, too." The silence between them thickened, no longer from fear alone, but something else, something unspoken, something that changed the air. Emma stepped closer, her voice trembling. "Daniel, how much of this have you dealt with before?" He looked at her, and for a moment she saw through him, the layers, the calm exterior, the secrets beneath, the shadows in his eyes. Enough to know that the man after you isn't just a stranger. He's someone with power, control, patience. Emma felt her stomach twist. "So what does he want?" Daniel hesitated. "I don't know." But Emma didn't believe him, not fully. He knew more than he was saying. She could see it in the tightness around his eyes, the guarded way he held himself, the way he kept placing himself between her and every possible threat. Before she could ask anything else, her phone buzzed again. Daniel was at her side instantly. Emma froze. Slowly, she lifted the phone. A new message from the same unknown number. Just 4 words. 4 words that drained the color from her face because they were impossible, terrifying, and true. "You can't hide forever." Emma's breath hitched. Daniel snatched the phone, scanning the message, tension radiating off him like heat. He stepped back, running his hair through his hair in a rare gesture of frustration. "This is escalating. He's getting bolder, more confident." "Daniel," she whispered, voice cracking, "how does he keep finding me?" Daniel turned slowly, eyes dark, determined, almost dangerous. "Because he isn't just watching you anymore, Emma." He stepped closer, his voice deepening. "He's watching us." And for the first time, Emma realized this wasn't just her story. Daniel had been pulled into it too, and he wasn't letting go. The night settled over the safe house like a heavy blanket, thick with silence, and the kind of darkness that made Emma feel every sound twice as loud. She sat near the window, hugging her knees to her chest, watching the faint orange glow of the streetlights flicker against the glass. She had survived so many terrifying moments already, shots fired behind her, silhouettes moving in the distance, strange cars slowing down when she walked by. But somehow, tonight felt different. Tonight, the fear felt personal. Tonight, her thoughts kept circling back to him, to Daniel, the man who had stepped between her and death without hesitation. The man she still didn't understand, yet felt safer with than anyone else. Daniel was in the next room, pacing quietly. She could hear the softened footsteps, the occasional rustle of his jacket, the steady rhythm of a man constantly analyzing danger. He hadn't said much since they arrived hours ago, not because he didn't want to speak to her, but because he was thinking. planning, protecting. But Emma didn't know how to sit still. Her chest felt tight with everything she was carrying: fear, confusion, gratitude, and something else she wasn't ready to name. She pushed off the window frame and walked down the short hallway. Daniel was standing by the table, his back turned toward her as he studied a map, tracing lines with the tip of his finger as if the answers were hidden inside the creases. His shoulders were tense, his jaw set, the muscles in his back stiff beneath his shirt. He looked like a man who hadn't taken a full breath in hours. She didn't say anything at first. She just watched him, realizing with a strange ache that even his silence made her feel safer. And then, softly, she asked, "Daniel, are you okay?" He froze, not dramatically, but enough that she noticed. He lifted his head slightly before turning toward her. His expression was calm, strong, but something about it felt tired. "I'm fine, just trying to figure out our next move." "Our next move," she whispered, her heartbeat thudding hard behind her ribs. "You don't have to keep saying it like it's your responsibility." "It is my responsibility." His voice was gentle but firm. "I promised I would protect you." Emma stepped closer, her fingers curling at her sides. "You didn't have to promise me anything." He looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his eyes softened. "I know, but I did." She exhaled shakily, feeling the weight of those words settle in her chest. Daniel wasn't saying them as a duty, he meant them, and that made them dangerous in a completely different way. "Daniel," she whispered, "I saw something I shouldn't have seen. I understand that. I understand why they want me gone, but why do you care this much?" He blinked, surprised by the question, and for a moment he didn't answer. His eyes dropped to the floor as if he was searching for the right words, then slowly lifted back to her. "Because," he said quietly, "because I've watched enough people die in that world. I'm not letting you be one of them." Emma felt her breath falter. There was something buried in his voice, something that sounded dangerously close to emotion. She took another small step forward. "Daniel, are you sure this isn't about something else?" A flicker crossed his face, a flicker of truth she wasn't supposed to see, and then he exhaled sharply, breaking eye contact. "It doesn't matter what else it might be. What matters is keeping you alive." Emma's heart thudded painfully. She wanted to ask him what that meant. She wanted to push for answers she wasn't sure she was ready to hear. But before she could speak, Daniel's phone buzzed on the table. The sudden vibration cut through the air like a blade. He moved quickly, grabbing it before she could even glance at the screen. His posture changed instantly, shoulders squared, jaw hardening, eyes narrowing. Emma's pulse spiked. "What is it?" Daniel didn't look up. "They found us." The world dropped from beneath her feet. How is that possible? You said this was one of the safest places you had." "It was." His voice was low, steady, deadly calm. "But they're not just searching randomly anymore. They're tracking patterns, movement, networks. They're getting help." "Help from who?" she whispered. Daniel lifted his gaze, and the look in his eyes chilled her to her bones. "Someone inside our system." Emma stepped back, instinctively reaching for the wall to keep steady. Everything was collapsing again. Every inch of safety she thought she had was slipping through her fingers. Daniel set the phone down, grabbed his jacket, and moved toward the door with the speed of someone who knew time was running out. "Pack your things," he said sharply. "We're leaving in 5 minutes." Emma's voice shook. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere they won't expect, somewhere they won't dare to follow." She stared at him, scared but trusting him more than she trusted herself. "Daniel, what aren't you telling me?" He paused at the doorway, just paused, and for the briefest moment she saw the truth flicker across his face. The truth that Daniel wasn't just protecting her. He was protecting something inside himself, something he didn't want her to see. "You don't need to know everything right now. You just need to stay close to me." Emma swallowed hard. "I'm not leaving your side." Those words did something to him, she saw it. His chest tightened, his eyes darkened with something he masked instantly.
He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. Good, because after tonight, I don't think I can lose sight of you. Her breath caught, the air thickened between them. Something unsaid pulsed through the silence like a heartbeat, and then the distant sound of an engine rumbled outside. Daniel's expression shifted in an instant, calm replaced by urgency, warmth replaced by steel. "They're here," he whispered. Emma felt the blood drain from her face. Daniel grabbed her hand, warm, steady, grounding, and pulled her close. "Stay behind me. Don't look back. Don't make a sound." His grip tightened. "You're going to be okay. I get you out of this. I promise." And then he led her into the darkness, not knowing that the next few hours would change everything, not knowing that someone they trusted was about to betray them, not knowing that the line between protector and something more had already been crossed, not knowing that the danger was closer than either of them imagined.
The city outside the safe house had fallen into a heavy, moody silence, one that pressed against the windows like something alive. Inside, the lights were low, the air still tinged with the warmth of dinner, though neither Emma nor Adrian had eaten very much. Hours had passed since the gunshot near the alley and the shadowy figure who had almost grabbed her, but the image still clung to her mind. Cold fingers wrapping around her wrist, the metallic click of a weapon. The moment fear had frozen her from the inside out, and then Adrian's voice, sharp, commanding, furious, his arm pulling her behind him, his body becoming a shield without a second thought. Even now, she could still see the way he had stood in front of her, like a wall built from pure adrenaline and rage. She didn't understand him, or why he felt responsible for her when she was nothing but a complication in his dangerous world, but she knew one thing: he had saved her life again, and the weight of that was doing something to her heart she wasn't ready to name. Adrian stood near the door now, his head bowed slightly, one hand pressed against the wooden frame as though he needed the support. The tension in his shoulders was unmistakable. He hadn't spoken since they returned. It was as if he was fighting something silent and brutal inside his own mind. Emma sat on the couch, her knees drawn together, hands clasped tightly. She exhaled softly. "You haven't said a word," she finally whispered. "Are you okay?" Adrian didn't turn immediately. His voice came out low, gravelly, almost restrained. "You could have died tonight." She blinked. "But I didn't, because of you." That made him turn. His eyes were fierce, not angry, but something more intense, something that saw straight through her. "That's not the point, Emma." He stepped closer, each movement deliberate. "You were targeted. He knew exactly where you were. He knew you were with me." Emma swallowed. The truth was sharp, cold. So it wasn't random. Nothing is random in my world. Adrian sat down across from her, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. He held her gaze, but there was something else underneath. Fear, guilt, maybe both. "Whoever attacked you tonight wasn't after you." She went still. "They were after you," Adrian continued quietly, "because you saw something you shouldn't have, and because you're under my protection now." The words hung in the air like smoke, dense and hard to breathe through. "So I'm in danger because of you," she whispered, not accusing, just trying to understand. Adrian closed his eyes for a moment. "You're in danger because someone believes hurting you would hurt me." Her heart skipped. "Does it?" Adrian's eyes snapped open. There was a long silence. His voice was barely a whisper. "More than I should allow." Emma looked down, her pulse fluttering like fragile wings beneath her skin. She shouldn't want him to feel anything at all. He was a Mafia protector, cold, guarded, too dangerous to fall for. And she was a witness, fragile, scared, swept into a world she didn't understand. They had no business being this close. But every time he looked at her, she felt that invisible thread between them tighten. Adrian pushed a hand through his hair and stood again, pacing slowly. "I should have kept more distance." "You mean from me?" His jaw clenched. "Yes." For some reason, those words stung in a way she didn't expect. "But you didn't," she said softly.
You stepped between me and a gun tonight. You grabbed my hand when we ran. She stopped, breath catching as he turned sharply. Don't misunderstand, he said too quickly, but the softness, the warmth lingering in his eyes betrayed him. Emma rose from the couch, her voice quiet but steady. I'm not misunderstanding, I'm just trying to understand you. Something in his expression cracked, just a little, but enough to show the man beneath the armor. He shook his head, stepping back, almost afraid. Emma, my world is built on violence, loyalty, blood. You're sunlight. You don't belong anywhere near people like me. She took a slow step forward. But I'm already here. His breath faltered. She could feel the storm inside him, pulling and resisting at once. I don't want you to be afraid of me, Adrian murmured. I'm not. You should be. She shook her head. I'm afraid of the people trying to kill me, not the man protecting me.
The silence between them thickened, heavy, warm, electric. Adrian's chest rose and fell in tight, controlled breaths, as if you were holding the weight of every conflicting emotion inside him. Emma, he whispered again, voice rough, please don't look at me like that. Like what? Like I'm someone worth trusting. Her heart hurt for him, for the man who carried too much responsibility, too much pain, too much danger around his soul. She stepped closer, now only an arm's length away. You've protected me more than anyone else ever has. Adrian looked down, his breath visibly shaking. That's the problem. Just as the moment between them teetered on something dangerously intimate, a loud knock shattered the silence. Emma jumped, heart leaping in her throat. Adrian's entire demeanor changed instantly. Calm replaced by calculation, softness replaced by steel. He held up a hand to keep her behind him, then approached the door silently, weapon drawn. The knock came again, not rushed, not nervous, slow, deliberate. Someone who wasn't afraid, someone who knew exactly who they were knocking for. Adrian glanced back at her. Stay behind the wall, don't make a sound. Her pulse raced as she slipped into the shadowed corner. Adrian unlocked the first bolt, but not the second, keeping the chain on. He cracked the door open just enough, only enough to see. A cold voice slipped through the gap. Adrian. Emma's blood ran cold. She knew that voice. She had heard it in the alley before the gunshot. Smooth, threatening, familiar in the worst possible way. Adrian's voice dropped into a deadly register. You made a mistake showing up here. The man outside chuckled lightly. I don't make mistakes. A pause. You're protecting the girl, aren't you? Emma pressed a hand over her mouth. Adrian pushed the door harder, chain still locked, keeping the man from seeing inside. You're not getting anywhere near her. We'll see. The voice lowered. This isn't over, Adrian. She saw something she wasn't supposed to, and you can't protect her forever. Then silence, heavy footsteps, fading, disappearing down the hallway. Adrian closed the door slowly, locked both bolts, slid the chain back into place. He stood there for a moment, leaning his forehead against the wood as though trying to steady himself. Emma stepped out from the corner, trembling. Who was that? Adrian finally turned, eyes burning with a fury she had never seen before. A man who wants you dead. She took a step back as the weight of reality crashed into her chest. Adrian, what are we going to do? He approached her, slow but steady, and placed a hand on her shoulder. His touch was warm, grounding. We're going to survive this, he said quietly. I promise you that. Emma looked up at him, at the man who had risked everything for her, even when he shouldn't have. She felt a pull, deep and undeniable, a connection she couldn't break even if she tried. Adrian exhaled slowly, as if battling something he couldn't show. But from this moment on, he whispered, you can't leave my sight. She blinked. You mean, you stay with me, every second, every step. His voice softened. Because I can't lose you, Emma. Not now. Her heart pounded, fear, warmth, relief, and something quietly growing between them, something that felt too big to name. and she realized then, staying close to Adrian wasn't the danger. Falling for him was. The morning was quiet, almost painfully still, as though the world itself were holding its breath for what was about to unfold. Emma woke with a heaviness in her chest, a lingering anxiety that clung to her like damp fog, and for the first time since all of this had begun, she felt a strange sense of inevitability. The past days, the fear, the closeness with him, the constant shadow of danger had all led to this moment. She knew that no matter how hard she tried, she could no longer pretend that her life would ever return to the ordinary rhythm she had once known. Across the room, he stirred. His presence, even in silence, radiated the same calm control she had grown accustomed to, yet she realized that underneath it was a rare vulnerability he never showed anyone. He was not just her protector, he had become her anchor, the reason her thoughts could stay tethered to something solid when the chaos outside threatened to pull her under. She turned slightly, watching him from the soft morning light that spilled through the curtains, the golden hue highlighting the strong lines of his jaw, the subtle curve of his lips, as if he too were dreaming of her. Her heart thudded, not from fear this time, but from a warmth she could no longer ignore. The day ahead demanded courage. Today they would finally confront the truth, the very people who had dragged her life into a shadow she could barely comprehend. She dressed with deliberate calm, each movement measured, her mind rehearsing the conversation, the questions, the risks. Yet with every thought her resolve wavered because part of her feared what would happen if she faced them without him. But he was there, as he had always been, silent and steadfast, a presence she could rely on even when everything else seemed uncertain. As they left the apartment, the streets seemed quieter than usual, almost holding back the whispers of the city. He led her through alleys she had never noticed before, through paths that were familiar to him but felt like a labyrinth to her. Every shadow seemed alive, every passerby a potential threat. She clutched the strap of her bag tightly, her knuckles whitening, and yet each time her gaze met his, she felt the unspoken reassurance that they would face whatever awaited together. And perhaps that was the first moment she allowed herself to breathe freely again, realizing that fear could be mitigated not by avoidance but by trust. They reached the edge of the district controlled by the Mafia family, the towering buildings casting long shadows that seemed to swallow the sunlight. He motioned for her to stay behind a corner while he surveyed the surroundings. Emma's heart pounded as she watched him move with precise, fluid steps, each movement an extension of his calm authority. She could feel the tension in the air, the silent anticipation that something monumental was about to happen. And in that tense quiet, she noticed the subtle shift in her own perception. She was no longer just a frightened witness, she was someone who had begun to rely on her instincts, her courage, her own quiet determination to survive. They entered the main hall of the Mafia compound, the grandeur of it contrasting sharply with the menace that permeated every corner. Shadows danced along the walls, cast by flickering chandeliers, and every sound, footsteps, a door creaking, a distant voice, made her heart leap. He guided her forward, subtly protective, subtly commanding, ensuring she remained unnoticed by the few guards stationed along the perimeter. Emma's eyes darted around, absorbing every detail, committing it to memory. She knew that this world was not hers, yet she could no longer ignore that she had been thrust into it, not merely as a victim, but as someone whose presence held weight, whose story now intertwined with theirs. Finally, they were confronted by the head of the family, a man whose reputation for ruthlessness was matched only by the cold precision in his eyes. Emma felt the room grow smaller as he approached, a palpable tension gripping her chest. She had imagined this moment countless times, but nothing had prepared her for the sheer intensity of it, the way his gaze seemed to strip away pretense, the way the air itself felt charged with authority and danger. He looked directly at her, and in that instant she understood the unspoken truth. He knew she had witnessed something he wanted, something that could change the balance of power. And yet, amidst the threat, there was curiosity,
A flicker of respect, even admiration, hidden beneath the layers of menace. Her protector stepped forward, placing himself subtly between her and the man. "She's not here to cause trouble," he said firmly, his voice steady, carrying a tone of ownership and protection that was unmistakable. Emma felt a flush rise to her cheeks, not from embarrassment, but from the realization that his words carried the weight of truth, the assertion that she was no longer merely a bystander, but someone who mattered to him. The Mafia head tilted his head slightly, studying him, weighing the implications, before finally letting a small nod pass, almost imperceptible, but enough to signal a fragile accord. Emma exhaled quietly, the tension loosening just enough for her to realize that while danger had not vanished, the immediate threat had been mitigated, thanks to him. In the hours that followed, they navigated a delicate negotiation, Emma providing details only she could, careful not to reveal too much too soon, while he orchestrated their strategy, his calm decisiveness guiding every step. She watched him, her admiration growing with each subtle command, each protective maneuver, each reassurance he offered without speaking. In the quiet moments when their eyes met, she saw the depth of his commitment, not just to her safety, but to ensuring that justice, in some form, would prevail. She realized then that she had begun to feel something far more complicated than gratitude. She felt a connection forged in shared peril, in mutual reliance, in unspoken understanding that neither could articulate, but both sensed deeply. As the confrontation drew to a close, the family head dismissed them with a warning, veiled but clear. Emma knew that this world she had stumbled into was far more dangerous than she had imagined, yet she also knew that she no longer faced it alone. He stood close to her, his presence a shield against uncertainty, a promise that she would be guided, protected, and perhaps even understood. And in that moment, Emma understood a truth she could no longer deny. The bond between them had transcended circumstance. It had been forged in fire, fear, and unwavering vigilance. She had entered this ordeal as a witness, fragile and uncertain, and yet she now emerged as someone who had claimed her own space, who had recognized the power of trust, courage, and expected love. Later, as they stepped back into the streets, Emma allowed herself a moment to breathe, to feel the soft warmth of sunlight on her face. He walked beside her, silent but attentive, their steps in sync, their proximity a quiet testament to the journey they had shared. She looked at him, heart swelling with emotion she could barely name, and realized that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. She had been the only witness, and he had been her only protection. But now, perhaps, they had become something more. Partners, equals, intertwined by circumstance, respect, and an undeniable, growing affection that neither could ignore. By the time they returned to a place that felt safe, her temporary refuge, his steadfast apartment, the city hummed around them, unaware of the silent victories and unresolved dangers that lingered in the shadows. She sat quietly, hands folded in her lap, and allowed herself a tentative smile. He glanced at her, a subtle, knowing curve of his lips, acknowledging her bravery, her resilience, and the quiet, growing connection between them. No words were necessary. They had spoken volumes through shared glances, measured movements, and the unspoken understanding that this bond, though forged under extraordinary circumstances, was genuine, steadfast, and perhaps enduring. That night, Emma lay awake, thinking of the days behind them and the uncertain future ahead. Yet for the first time, the fear that had dominated her life had softened, replaced with something deeper, a sense of belonging, trust, and tentative hope. She realized that though she had been thrust into danger, into a world she had never known, she had emerged with more than survival. She had gained protection, guidance, and a heart that now beat for someone whose presence she could no longer imagine living without. and as she drifted into sleep, she felt the certainty that no matter what storms might come, they would face them together, and that perhaps in this world of shadows and peril she had finally found a kind of light.